Gamers of the internet, if there's one game I can't help but come back to over and over and over again, it's Genshin Impact. But if there's a second game I can't help but come back to over and over again, it's Elden Ring. I have about 800 hours in the lands between, and I don't regret a single second of it. I want to talk about that time today. Specifically, I want to do a ranking, which is something I haven't done yet on this channel. I really want to rank the legacy dungeons of Elden Ring, both the base game and DLC. This is a topic that really interests me, and let's be real, not that many people have done rankings of dungeons. If you like the idea of this video, consider leaving a like and a subscribe, or request another kind of ranking you'd like to see in the comments. Anyway, let's begin. At number 28, we have Mohgwyn Palace. So, I feel like maybe I need to do some explaining for what I'm defining as a legacy dungeon in this video. I'm not just including the main dungeons, but I'm also including basically any unique large building or open field where Torrent is disabled. Under that definition, the Mohgwyn Dynasty Mausoleum definitely counts, much to my dismay. This level is so very bland. As long as you're able to dodge the world's slowest zombies farting out mustard gas, most of the climb towards Papa Mohg will be boring and uneventful. I do need to give some credit to the Blood Cave though. These Hemomancers spawning out of magic blood is metal as fuck, and they're just as creepy as they are challenging. The gang squad of red frogs is also pretty memorable, but I wouldn't call that a huge win. Playing through this dungeon is the equivalent of walking up a small hill with a nosebleed. Number 27 is the Ainsel Rivers. These rivers and the ruins within them are just so dull. The baby Estelles do make for a memorable set piece in each of them, but as you can see from my footage, the ruins without them basically turn into a pit stop on the way to more interesting locations. The only other enemy here are the Claymen, who pose about as much danger to you as a grandmother with a shopping cart. For me, the Ainsel River ruins are just a location to sprint through as quickly as possible. In honor of that, I'll be quickly sprinting to the next entry. Number 26 is the Lake of Rot. I bet a lot of you are surprised the Lake of Rot isn't dead last on my list. Yeah, I kind of am too. The thing about the Lake of Rot is that despite being a nightmare poison swamp, it really isn't that dangerous. There are a grand total of 1 enemies here who can actually deal damage to you. This means that being ankle deep in gamer girl bathwater is little more than a timer, dictating when you have to teleport back to the bonfire. When you do eventually cross the Crimson Lake, you then have to deal with gank squads of centipedes, which isn't very fun either. The only redeeming feature of this dungeon are the raisable platforms. I love when levels have dynamic changes as you play, so I'm actually a very big fan of these. But that doesn't stop the Lake of Rot from giving me digital AIDS every time I play it. Okay, that's kind of mean. The Lake of Rot isn't that bad. It gives me digital HIV. Number 25 is the Parkour Divine Tower of Caelid. This dungeon is just obnoxious. The fact that your character's shoes are made of butter makes the jumping challenges with threat of instant death unreasonably frustrating. The Divine Tower of Caelid is the ultimate jumping challenge in Elden Ring, and is also, therefore, the ultimate pain in my ass. To give some credit though, this area is very unique and memorable. Navigation is kind of a puzzle of spatial awareness, which is at least novel. I like the enemies here too. Both on the outside and the inside, you need to worry about your footing as you engage in combat, which is decently interesting. And this level really doesn't overstay its welcome. You can clear this monolithic tower in just a few minutes, as long as you don't accidentally plummet to your death. Of course, if I'm listing brevity as a positive, then the level in question probably isn't very good. At number 24, we have the Stone Coffin Fisher. So, I nearly forgot this level even existed. I was almost all the way done with the script when I suddenly had purple conniptions and realized I had to rank the Stone Coffin Fisher somewhere. I don't hate this dungeon by any means. I mean, it's a big hole. And as Jacob Geller can tell you, people love big holes. Visually, the way the entire dungeon is constructed from these enormous coffins converging on top of St. Trina's final resting place is just so fucking cool. I love the colors too. The lighting here very significantly sets this level apart from the rest of the DLC. You might be wondering, if it looks so unique, how could I forget about it? Well, that's because playing through it just doesn't do it for me. I didn't like getting sniped at in Call of Duty, and I don't like it here either. Playing through the Stone Coffin Fisher is mostly just a mad dash to the exit. I would rather play something else. Number 23 is Castle Soul. You're not going to believe me after listening to the next several entries, but I generally like castles as a dungeon environment. For some reason though, Castle Soul really annoys me. It's a level I never look forward to going through. Having two Rengars ready to ambush you at the castle's front door really sets the tone for just how rough your next 15 minutes are gonna be. I also almost always die, several times, to the dual-wielding Banished Knight. This guy is really good at instant transmissioning his sword directly into my asshole. My biggest issue with this dungeon comes from its layout. You have to teleport or slowly walk back to the church bonfire several times if you're trying to collect all of this dungeon's loot. And I do mean slowly walk. This castle feels way too big for its own good. It's just kind of hollow with too much open space. And I don't like how exposed it feels to the elements. It makes me feel like I'm both outside and inside at the same time, which fries my brain cells. But if you want to talk about frying brain cells, the constant dinging of dongs provided by the nearby walking mausoleum cooks my head like a deep fryer. It simply does not stop. It's so loud. This walking mausoleum is the true boss of this area. You will lose your marbles by the time you finally finish clearing the castle with this guy donging around outside.
Leave me alone!
At number 22, I have Redbane Castle. Radahn's home has some of the same problems for me as the last entry had. It's another castle that's mostly outside and exposed, which isn't a vibe I like. Luckily, this castle is at least more condensed, so it's more fun to play through. Redbane Castle also gets the benefit of having two separate states of being. Depending on where you are in your playthrough, this dungeon will either be a tranquil walk through empty halls, or a blood-pumping siege against the forces of Radahn. When you think about it, it's kind of a beta light world, dark world mechanic. You can't even collect all the rewards if you don't risk the dangerous assault. It's a solid challenge. The knights and soldiers of Radahn's army are more than capable of kicking your ass. I brought this up while talking about the Lake of Rot, but I really like levels with dynamic changes. The two forms of Redbane Castle isn't quite the same thing, because it doesn't change from one state to the other seamlessly, but I still appreciate getting basically two different levels out of the same castle. Number 21 is the Subterranean Shunning Grounds. This is the most immersive port of Mario Bros. Ever made. When people ask me how I'm doing, I usually say that I feel like shit, but never before have I ever actually felt like shit. Exploring the sewer system of Elden Ring's largest city is just as gross as you would expect it to be. However, there's a bit of a twist on this sewer level that makes it a tad more interesting. It's all in the name. Subterranean Shunning Grounds. This is a nasty place to throw away all the unwanted citizens of the world above. And just think, if Earth had a place like this to throw away all of our billionaires, the world would be such a better place. In-game though, the moment you come down here, you understand why the Omens have been relegated to the sewer rat lifestyle. They are very scary and very obnoxious enemies. Their challenge aids a ton in making this place feel oppressive and yucky. The maze-like layout also aids in that feeling. I've played through this level probably a dozen times, and I still don't know exactly how everything connects. The pipes in particular feel like the world's most claustrophobic labyrinth. I do kind of like that though, as it's maybe the only place in the entire game where using rainbow stones for path tracking feels worthwhile. The Shunning Grounds are kind of a mixed bag, but you can't deny it really is a shitty level. At number 20, I have the Shaded Castle. Here we have yet another castle, fully exposed and open to the elements. The difference with the Shaded Castle, though, is that the element in question is actually the Black Plague. Listen, there's no getting around it. Poison pools are a pretty annoying hazard, and they always have been. This castle is also home to many equally annoying residents. Tanky zombies, insta-kill basilisks, even the King of Cringe himself makes an appearance. For all of its drawbacks, I actually think the layout of the Shaded Castle is really good. Beelining through the critical path is quick and easy if that's what you want to do, but there's so many side rooms to investigate too. And you can use broken architecture as safe havens from the poison pool, which I love. My ancient monkey neurons activate anytime a level uses non-traditional objects as walkable surfaces. The Shaded Castle is really a pretty positive experience for me. Honestly, I think every dungeon from here on out is going to be more positive than negative. And for that point to hit at number 20 out of 28 is a real testament to how good the levels in Elden Ring actually are. Number 19, I've placed Castle Morn. The castle train just keeps on coming, I guess. This is the first early game dungeon I've talked about in this video, and it's a solid entry. The theme of a castle engaged in active battle with forces other than yourself is just dope. While making progress, you'll run into soldiers and misbegotten duking it out to the death. You can sit back and watch with a bucket of popcorn, or you can be like me and forcefully insert yourself into a situation that doesn't involve you. The reason for this level being so low on this list overall is due to its layout. It's a pretty straight shot to the end without too many diverging paths or optional routes. Using roofs as platforms is great, of course, but that makes up a very small portion of this dungeon. And at this point, you all know how I feel about being outside. Yucky. With that said, I actually kind of like it here. Rainy environments are absolutely my shit, and Castle Morn's placement on the southern tip of the Weeping Peninsula gives it exceptional vibes for me. It's a solid castle, but I've seen better. Number 18 is Volcano Manor. For an example of vibes that I do not find exceptional, we have Volcano Manor, or as I like to call it, Bowser's Vacation Home. Lava and fire isn't an aesthetic I like all that much, since the Volcano Manor is, well, inside a volcano. That's really all this dungeon has to offer. But there's still a lot to like despite that. Each section of the manor plays in a way that feels very unique. It's kinda like this dungeon is several different levels mashed together into one. The first section is a dense cluster of roofs, layered with enemies and parkour moments.
Parkour!
Then we get to play the floor as lava, literally. There's a spooky sunless room filled with redditors. And my personal favorite section, Snake Way from Dragon Ball Z. If a particular section of Volcano Manor is unfun to you, it'll only be a few minutes before a change of pace eventually comes. I think this dungeon has great gameplay variety. It almost makes up for my dislike of the theming. At number 17 is Castle Ensis. I've complained before about castles in this game feeling like they're actually outside, but Castle Ensis is the most exposed castle I've seen in my entire life. Why is so much of this dungeon covered in dirt? Please stop making me touch grass! At least the second half of this dungeon is a lot more up my alley. Pretty much everything after the fight with Moonrafil is enjoyable to me. The ramparts and wizard hallway are by far my favorite part of the entire dungeon. I just wish the first half could be more like this. At least the enemy variety throughout the entire thing is something I enjoy. I can see why Mesmer was so successful at conquering the Land of Shadow. His soldiers can really throw down. With the Black Knights backing them up, clearing this dungeon is a very rewarding challenge. I'm a little disappointed by the castle's flow though. It's mostly a straight shot all the way through without too many interesting things to traverse over. It's just very standard. Okay, have we talked about enough castles? I think we've talked about enough castles. It's finally time for a change of pace. At number 16, we have the Ruin-Strewn Precipice. More than anything, I just think this dungeon is cool on a meta level. The map makes you think that this is just going to be a regular short tunnel, in and out, 20-minute adventure. But it's actually a back door into the Altus Plateau. And Elden Ring makes you work for this Altus access. On your climb to the top, you have to deal with the Vulgar Militia, and they're definitely not Geneva-approved traps. Alongside these war criminals are some giant bats and obnoxious land squids that team up to stop your freestyle climb. The path upwards is, once again, a rather disappointing linear jog. However, since this level is built into a cliffside, I don't mind it as much. If you could wander too far into the y-axis, you'd lose sight of the gorgeous Elden view. The direct linear level design serves the theme of this dungeon well, but it is pretty simple. So simple that I don't actually have anything else I need to say about it. Number 15, I've placed Caria Manor. The second manor of the list, except this one is magic themed instead of fire themed. And the theming for me really does make all the difference. I don't know what it is, but Elden Ring does magic theming incredibly well. I think it's the colors they choose to go for. Blue and green is just more appealing to me than red and black. The magic dungeons of this game also feel a lot more secretive. Discovering all of them kind of feels like you're uncovering one of Gandalf's vacation homes. Even the approach to Caria Manor feels intriguing. This magical hellfire wouldn't be here if there wasn't something juicy hiding inside. So yeah, Secret Wizard Castle is absolutely my kind of thing. What's less my kind of thing are the enemies here. Finger Creepers are such a brutal enemy. They're tanky, filled with poise, and deal insane damage. I mean, for real, these hands got hands. Luckily, they only occupy the courtyard, and you can pick up most of the items without even fighting any. I should criticize the open emptiness of the first courtyard section, but I kind of like it. The ground is uneven, and the whole area is filled with fog. Despite how open it is, you can still get turned around and confused, like Joe Biden stuck inside of an IKEA, and I think that's a pretty impressive accomplishment. The rest of the level is disappointingly linear. At least there's some hidden jumping secrets. And the top level has a side path you can take to avoid a dangerous giant magic encounter. Caria Manor is short and sweet. The theme and vibe do all the heavy lifting for me. You might say that's stupid, but this is my list, and I will rank Gandalf's secret timeshare wherever I please. Number 14 is Miquella's Haligtree. You want to talk about finding secret locations? This frickin' tree is harder to find than God's goddamn tree of knowledge. Secrets upon secrets with this one. Finally getting there is well worth it though. The theme of this dungeon is Big Tree, and then a ripoff of the Ewok Village. I think this is the first castle town / city style dungeon I've talked about on this list. And that's because I absolutely love those kinds of dungeons, so they're all gonna be front loaded. This one is a lot more naturalistic than some of the others, so due to its proximity next to grass, I'll have to rank it lower than all of its competition. The residents of the settlement are all tree-hugging druids instead of renowned knights and soldiers, which is just a less interesting aesthetic to me. I really like the level design though. Starting at the tippy top of the world's tallest tree and trying to navigate the perilous branches to climb downwards is super cool. There's also a ton of side branches to explore if you want to find all the items. As a kleptomaniac, I of course do. Or you can pretty quickly make a beeline for the town, which has its own fun layout. Much like the ruin-strewn precipice, this part of the dungeon is built into the side of an impossibly high cliffside. Or tree side? Either way, I think it's a lot of fun to descend the switchbacks of the city. This level hides a solid amount of alternate paths and optional rooms for how linear it initially seems. It even has a ton of different types of enemies to fight. The only things keeping the Halig tree down so low are a drab color scheme, a theme that I like but don't love, and the possibility of easily dying to gravity, my arch nemesis. At number 13, I've placed Shadow Keep. So I really like the first section of Shadow Keep. Finally, we have peak indoor castle aesthetics, and I love it. Unfortunately, it's over pretty quick, and the rest of the level, the Specimen Storehouse, just doesn't hit the same way for me. It's basically a giant library, and libraries are full of books, which is nerd shit. I also think the colors of this dungeon are kind of dull. I like pretty much everything else here though. The Rain of Fire Bridge is a super memorable encounter that catches you off guard on your first playthrough. Using the massive specimens as platforms is obviously something I love. I even like the disturbing jar room. I may not like the theming of the Specimen Storehouse, but I can't deny it's very fun to traverse. Finding makeshift paths on your climb to the peak is a great gaming experience. Dynamically changing the orientation of the specimens halfway through is also something I obviously love. Every part of this level is fun. I like the enemy variety, I like the layout, I like the feeling of making progress as you climb. It's all good shit. If this level looked more like a normal castle, and less like a taxidermist's operating room, it would have been in my top 5 easy. At number 12 is Nokron, Eternal City. The coolest thing about Nokron is the secrecy surrounding it. I already brought up how much I like the secret forbidden magic thing Elden Ring does with Caria Manor, but holy shit, Nokron takes that idea to a whole other level. If you're a simp for Ranni, and let's be honest, you are, then this location is of great importance to you. Accessing this city via the world's biggest pothole is a lot cooler than it sounds. It really makes you feel like some kind of archaeologist discovering a long-lost ruin after thousands of years. The opening half is pretty short as levels go, but it keeps the mysterious vibes on point. Then after a quick jaunt through the ancestral woods, you can begin exploring downtown Nokron. By this point in the video, I think I've made it pretty clear how much I love when levels use things other than regular old ground as walkways for traversal. Both halves of Nokron employ that idea liberally, and it's awesome. The shape-shifting slime enemies are also a fantastic idea for an enemy. The game is able to catch you off guard every single time they reverse anamorph. I really like this secretive hidden city. I think it's super cool and a lot of fun. It's kind of surprising that this is only the second best hidden underground eternal city in the game of Elden Ring. Number 11, Noxtella Eternal City. You can pretty much copy and paste everything from my last entry into this one. Nokron is cool, but Noxtella is incredible. This dungeon is Nokron's older sibling in every way. It's larger, it has more interesting enemies, and it somehow manages to look even better. Both of these Eternal Cities are truly magical in appearance. The color scheme, the particle effects, the architecture, it's amazing! The enemies are great too. I mean, giant ant mounts? That's cool as hell! Even on foot, the Noxtella warriors are fun to fight. The layout of their city is kind of basic and linear, but I think that the expansive river area more than makes up for it. Plundering this magically ancient city for its secrets is an incredible feeling for me. I don't want to harp on this entry for too long, since it's basically the same thing as Nokron, but better, so I'll just cut it here and move on to the next dungeon. Number 10 is Raya Lucaria Academy. 3 magically themed dungeons in a row? What are the odds? Like everyone else my age, I loved Harry Potter when I was younger. So a magical school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world of Elden Ring was always going to click with me. Of course, I don't remember the teachers at Hogwarts trying to kill students on sight, but I guess that's the difference between the British education system and whatever the fuck this is. Thankfully, murdering teachers back is just as fun as you'd expect it to be. The other enemies on display here are mostly taken up by the multi-armed mannequins, who provide a serviceable melee threat. Where this dungeon really shines most is its layout. Raya Lucaria is absolutely jam-packed with alternate paths and little secrets. The entire rooftop parkour segment is completely optional, but it's worth doing. Jumping across rooftops like Spider-Man mostly isn't too annoying, and it's a cool looking set piece. I mean, the entire academy is filled with cool set pieces. I think the ball-crushing staircase is my personal favorite. This level feels grand without feeling empty. If school was this fun in real life, I probably would have gotten a bachelor's degree that was worth a damn, instead of one in video game design. Man, what a stupid mistake that was. Number 9 is the Fort of Reprimand. I bet there's a lot of you who don't even remember that this little fort exists. And I don't blame you. It really is an out-of-the-way, insignificant, and unimportant DLC location. It's like the middle child. In a family of 12, nobody's got time to dedicate brain space for this. Nobody, except for me, because I think this little dungeon is fucking amazing. The Fort of Reprimand is very basic. It's just a fort, a little mini castle, and yet it plays as good as any of Elden Ring's massive, sprawling dungeons. Its layout really is just a short series of hallways and rooms, and I think that's what I like so much about it. The Fort of Reprimand is a castle level stripped down to its absolute bare essentials. The devs even managed to pack some secret pathways into this fun-sized castle. The halls are mostly filled with shitter-type enemies, but the Omen Killers and the mini-boss add a nice difficulty wrinkle. This dungeon is 10 minutes of pure, concentrated fun. If you forgot this place existed, do yourself a favor and give it another look. I promise, it is worth your while. Number 8 is Stormveil Castle. As the first major legacy dungeon of the game, Stormveil has the unenviable task of making a positive first impression. I'm happy to report that it absolutely does. The variety on display in this castle is astounding. There's a phenomenal mix of different castle-based aesthetics, including great indoor locations. Hallelujah for being inside! Even the outbits of the castle are great. For example, I always love clambering on top of castle walls while fighting knights and birds. Speaking of which, this castle has phenomenal enemy variety too. Weak soldiers, strong soldiers, scary knights, Edward Scissorbirds. What else could you ask for? Oh, you're asking for good level design? No problem! Stormveil's design is immaculate! The paths in this dungeon are laid out like a series of overlapping circles, like a multi-ringed Venn diagram or something. Each path intersects with other paths several times as you explore. If you were to bullheadedly keep moving forward in one direction, then you're bound to eventually loop back to a place you've already been. This is easily one of the densest levels in the entire game. I kind of can't believe how well designed the entire experience of playing it is. It's basically a perfect level. And to think, this is only number 8 on my list. We are firmly in a string of S-tier levels now, my friends. At number 7 is the Shadowkeep Church District. Is it dumb to have a second entry for the Shadowkeep instead of lumping everything together? Maybe, but it's not like you can access the church district from the main keep without exploring elsewhere anyway. So I'm going to list them as separate dungeons. Besides, it's my list and my rules. If you don't like it, you can write a letter to your congressman. I like the church district way more than the main keep. It reminds me a lot of the new Londo ruins, which I think is almost certainly intentional. Draining the water dynamically changes the level and opens it up into being more full-sized. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Dynamically changing levels is something I will always love. And as you know, something else I always love is jumping across makeshift pathways from stuff like scrap metal and rooftops. Of course, the biggest drawback to this level has to be its length. It's pretty short, and besides the water hazard, it doesn't have too much going on. I really don't care though. I like this dungeon's watery, decrepit theme and the shifting layout once you drain the water. For me, it deserves to be at number 7 on the list. Number 6 is Farum Azula. Stormveil had the difficult task of being the first legacy dungeon of the game. Farum Azula has the equally difficult task of being the final. It would be embarrassing if Elden Ring was filled with so many great dungeons, only to trip and faceplant at the finish line. I'm happy to say that we do not live in that world. Instead, we live in a world where the final major dungeon of the game is one of its best. First, I gotta praise the visuals and theming. Remember, this level is called Crumbling Farum Azula. It's an ancient city that's been inopportunely struck with the cataclysmic event of visiting Kansas. The crumbling, sandy aesthetic is just wonderful. And come on, a castle in the sky is one thing, but a castle city in the sky surrounded by tornadoes? How can you not love that? And the entire dungeon is filled to the brim with alternate paths and optional sections. It manages to be one of the biggest dungeons in the game, while somehow also being one of its most dense. I can only imagine how much work went into bringing Farum Azula to life. The enemies are no slouch either. Even the basic enemies can pose a threat. And if that wasn't enough, some of them have even hatched into their final skeletal form. And this dungeon is filled with dragons!
Hello there.
The visual of a tornado-filled sky that's also riddled with dragons is like every 10-year-old dream aesthetic. Farum Azula is a phenomenal final dungeon before Elden Ring's concluding gauntlet of bosses. I'm so very impressed. At number 5, I've placed Midra's Manse. The final mansion on this list is something straight out of Resident Evil. Souls games don't often dive into full-on horror aesthetics, but anytime they do, it's always pants-pissingly memorable. Who doesn't love a scary mansion in the middle of an expansive cursed forest? As soon as you even approach the mansion, you realize that there isn't going to be any sunshine and rainbows inside. Unfortunately, I don't think the enemy selection does a good job of reinforcing the horror vibes. The Candle Inquisitors are certainly creepy, but we've already seen them before. And they don't hold a candle to the creepiness of the enemies outside. Luckily, this dungeon's layout is sufficiently creepy to make up for that. There's long, eerie hallways, unnerving, collapsing rafters, and you even have to navigate through the scariest thing of all, a library. It is mostly a straight shot, but that linearity makes the experience feel like a theme park ride. I know I probably shouldn't have this level as high as I do, but I just think it's neat. Its short length and underwhelming enemies could never ruin the vibes I feel every time I set foot in these cursed halls. Number 4 is Enter Elam. Initially, when I was sketching out this list, I had this dungeon at number 1. But after going through it again for footage, I found myself a little disappointed. I remember it being longer and denser, but in reality, this dungeon is pretty straightforward. Of course, that doesn't mean I don't think it's awesome. It's still at number 4. Firstly, I love the visuals. It's like the best aspects from Farum Azula have been turned up to 11. This is a once beautiful and golden palace reduced to crumbling sand.
I don't like sand.
It vibes with me on all levels. It's even floating in the sky like Farum Azula. More than any other level in the game, Enter Elam exudes the feeling of walking through a truly fallen kingdom. Compared to some other dungeons, it's on the shorter side, but it still is fairly long and has a great variety of gameplay. There's weak enemies and, fuck you, difficult enemies. There's hidden secrets, alternate paths, and the cherry on top, it contains the single best boss fight in the entire FromSoft catalog. Needle Knight Lita's Gank Squad. Think that's a crazy take? Well, I made a whole ass video explaining why that's the truth. Check it out on the card here, or in the description if you're interested. My memories of my first time playing through this level are held in an insanely high regard. Despite that, I think the following entries actually hold up better for me over time than this one does. Number 3 is Bellarat. Bellarat was the first dungeon I encountered in my first DLC playthrough, and let me tell you, it might be the highlight of that whole experience. This dungeon slaps harder than my parents. First, let's talk appearance. I love the skybox. It's like a massive bedsheet has been draped over the entire city, giving it this unknowable, ethereal aesthetic. It feels like playing through a dream. I don't think I can praise the way this looks enough. It's magical. Though I love the skybox, I need to admit, I think the other aspects of the city are kind of drab and lifeless. The art direction of Bellarat does make sense for a city that is under the literal shadow of God, but that doesn't mean I'm an especially big fan. It really doesn't matter though, because this dungeon nails everything else. Fighting through city streets and their rooftops brings me so much joy. Especially because the enemies are fun to fight. Sure, the Shadow Citizens aren't much to write home about, but what they lack in strength, they make up for with numbers. I don't know about you, but I take a lot of pleasure in slaughtering dozens of mostly defenseless town people.
Remember, no Russian.
The Horned Warriors, on the other hand, oh dear, doing combat with these enemies always puts me into panic mode. This is a great dungeon that serves as a wonderful intro to Shadow of the Erdtree. And if you've been keeping track, you know that this is my favorite dungeon of the DLC. All that's left are the best of the best from the base game. At number 2, I have Elfale. Elfale is consistently one of the most fun areas to clear no matter how many times I play through Elden Ring. And I've played through it a lot. I think I might be chronically addicted. Elfale has almost everything you could ask for in a good Souls-like dungeon. Most importantly to me, of course, is how it looks. The golden color scheme, the view over the ocean, even the architecture itself adds to this level's obscene beauty. And that's not all the architecture does. It also enables some of the most fun traversal in the entire game. Elfale is built essentially like a multi-layered wall. And as the player, you can jump between different layers of that wall as you explore. There's even some naturally growing tree roots that can be used as platforms to aid in your exploration. Enemy variety is amazing too. Every single room and hallway contains an interesting new encounter to clear. And can we all appreciate that even though this is the dungeon of the Shardbearer, whose whole thing is Scarlet Rot, Elfale only has a single room dedicated to giving you chlamydia. They could have so easily made this the Black Gulch of Elden Ring, and the fact that they didn't shows that Miyazaki does have restraint after all. Well, I would say that, but now I'm remembering that the Lake of Rot exists, and all my admiration is turning to apathy. Number 1 is none other than Lane Dell. This is the best level in Elden Ring, hands down. Everything positive I've said about every other level is present here and turned up to the max. The theme? Well, it's the biggest castle town we've ever seen from one of these games. Of course I love it. And it looks the part too. Gorgeous lighting, gorgeous architecture, killer art direction all around. Bro, there's even a fucking dragon corpse draped across it. That is visual you will never forget. I love good art direction, but for most of you, the gameplay direction is what's going to feel totally unmatched. Remember what I said about Stormveil and how it was designed kind of like a multi-layered Venn diagram? That design choice reappears here in a way that almost makes Stormveil feel like last year's iPhone. It's so quaint by comparison. I often find myself forgetting exactly how some sections connect to each other because this dungeon is just that dense and massive. Traversing these city streets is no easy task. An incredible swath of enemies are waiting for you around every corner of every room and road. No two encounters feel exactly the same. You get to fight soldiers, knights, perfumers, pages, dogs, misbegotten, zombies, hands with hands, and probably more enemies I'm not even thinking of. You simply cannot feel bored while playing through Lane Dell. Hell, set aside the enemy variety. The level itself is filled with variety. Streets, ramparts, a big-ass tree, sewers, even the dragon is part of the walkable terrain. Storming the capital is so unbelievably fun. I think I finally understand exactly why January 6th happened. So, there it is. All 28 legacy dungeons ranked by me. This video is super long, so I'm gonna keep this outro very brief. If you'd like to see more of this, let me know in the comments below with your requests of what I should do. If you're too impatient to wait, you can watch some of my other videos. I'll link that Needle Knight Lida video here, but you can't go wrong with anything I've made. Of course, simply a like and a subscribe would do wonders for me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to stay positive and have a wonderful day, everyone.